side by side is a core value of our club, and our fans are a massive part of that.
Hello and welcome to the season premiere of the Side by Side Footy Show. This is a series all about being side by side and black and white with heart and soul, and we'll be covering a multitude of topics. Now, obviously, I've decided to do the premiere after the season for Collingwood have already been finished, so I thought, you know what, we'll just do a season review as the premiere of the show. Now, I won't just be talking about Collingwood and, reviewing Collingwood with its players, with its trade rumours, whatever it is in the upcoming few months. For today's show, we'll be focusing on the season review, what went right, what went wrong. It's been a very long season. A lot has happened, and there's a lot to really get through. So let's get right into it. Okay, so the season review. So I look back on this season, and there is the good, there is the bad, and there is the ugly, right? So a lot of things happened. It's been a very, let's just say, active and, controversial season, right? So many things from, recruitment and what went off during the off season, obviously just winning the flag, coming back into the year as premiers, and obviously carrying a premiership hangover, right? The players obviously, celebrated pretty hard over the off season, and because the season started a bit earlier, it just meant that we were always kind of playing catch up for the year. And once you understood, once I had coming into the season, I kind of had the mentality that would be pretty good, would be pretty strong. After the first few games, that's when I realized, okay, there's clearly a hangover. There's clearly a lot of stuff lingering over from last year that, we're not quite at our best. And then that happened, and I kind of, expected, okay, we'll just try to qualify. That's really it. No top four, forget all about that. So we just had to focus on qualifying, and ironically, towards the end of the season, we could have actually made top four, if it wasn't for one or two losses that we had. But looking back on it, a lot did start to go wrong, right? From, obviously we had the premiership hangover. That was the main thing that kind of started everything, and we were just playing catch up from there. And then because of that, you started to get more injuries, and we started to get, and the worst part about having injuries is there's a difference when you get like an injury and then, you get some time where all these players are playing together anyway. Like, the new players that have been brought in, they're playing together. That didn't happen for us. So we'd literally get a player back from injury, and then two would go on the injury list. At one point, I remember there was 3 players that went out, and then 1 player came in. And it was constant. That was constant the whole season, where we just kept having to deal with bringing in new players. I mean, we had 6 players make the AFL debut. Obviously, Long made his Collingwood debut. He did play at Hawthorn for a little bit. But it's crazy. Like, if you really think about it, 7 players who have basically, right, haven't played for Collingwood before, haven't played AFL level 6 of them. And to bring them in while they were, while the VFL was also going through injuries, it was very hard. It was very hard. Across the board, from the AFL to the VFL, everything was chaotic. We brought in the best VFL players into the AFL system, and that was new to them, and especially because of how Craig McRae sets up the team. And, we play a system game. You need time. You need experience in those positions to know your role better, and etc. So we're all just playing catch up, and, 1 player will come back in, and then 2 will go out, and we didn't really start to have a consistent flow in the team in terms of the players that are playing up until the later rounds, right? So I don't want to blame injuries. I don't want to blame the hangover, but you have to understand that these factors are compounding, right? All these factors do compound on each other, and it does delay your season. Like, I remember, I think it was Bulldogs in a few games, Bobby Hill was our key forward, right? Bobby Hill was the guy that we were trying to get the ball up the field to. And that's really tough, when you don't have a key tall that can mark the ball up the ground. It just means we're constantly stuck in the defensive half. Looking at it from that point of view, a lot did go wrong in that regards, and I can't really go, we just weren't good enough. It's really not that simple. Obviously, we weren't good enough to make the 8, yes, for sure. But there was a lot of compounding factors adding to the fact that, there was a few games where the umpiring was horrendous and literally just, cost us the game in many ways. I think back to Sydney, I think back to Freo. Even early in the season when Ginnivan kicked a goal when it was out of bounds. Again, these aren't excuses. I'm not saying here that's why we didn't make the 8. But again, these things, they compound, right? These are compounding factors that just add up to why the season kept getting derailed. You saw towards the end of the season, we had a massive rise, right? Suddenly, we're starting to get the players that we need in the team. McStay came back in, thankfully. And just before that, Mycheck came back in, and then he dropped out again, injured for the rest of the year. So it was just such a frustrating thing to deal with from an injury standpoint. But overall, despite everything I've said, despite not making the 8 and just finishing outside the 8, I genuinely felt more positive out of the season than negatives in terms of, how do I put this? Like, I don't mean that in terms of, obviously it's a big negative that we didn't make finals, right? We need to be making finals, especially with our list and the age group and whatever. We have a very, there's a period of time where we can really, our premiership windows open. And, I would look back and I'd go, for me, on a personal level, some of the games I went to were really great, right? I went to the 2 Carlton games, we won those, that felt amazing. I went to the Brisbane game, and that was incredible as well. I went to a lot of other games. Yeah, some of them were lost, some of them thing. But when it mattered, right? When it was against the big rivals and stuff like that, and towards the end of the season when we really needed to get it together, I thought Craig McRae and the team and the players did a great job of, uniting. And it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy to get into that position. A lot of teams might have dropped their heads at being going, you know what, we just want the season to end. But no, they didn't. They kept fighting until the very last game. They kept, we didn't go out like losers. We went out like reigning premiers. Even though we didn't make finals, we still went out like reigning premiers, right? We won the last 4 out of 5 games. We should have won 5 out of 5 if we wasn't for that, the non-50 call for Dan McStay against Sydney. But again, like it's one of those things where you look back on the season and you think, you know what, it was okay. It was okay. It wasn't great. It's not ideal that we didn't make finals. Don't get me wrong. But we beat the teams that I really wanted us to beat, right? Brisbane and Carlton were 2 big teams I really wanted to beat. We beat them twice. That felt good. Obviously, we had couple of draws early on in the season, and if we just didn't draw 1 game, we would have been in the 8, which is kind of crazy. But again, it's so hard to judge this season in an objective way where you're going, oh, well, you didn't make the 8. That means you guys are, that wasn't good enough. That's it. It's just a bad season. Is it a bad season? I wouldn't say it's a bad season. I would say it's not been a great season. It's not been ideal. But given the circumstances, we kept fighting. And Craig McRae, I'm so glad we have someone like Craig McRae as a coach at this club, because I think many other coaches in his position, given what happened, given all the changes, like you saw all of a sudden, Ginnivan goes over to Hawthorn and Taylor Adams goes over to Sydney. And all of a sudden, these 2 teams are playing the exact same style of gameplay to the T, to the letter, as Collingwood were over the last couple of years under Craig McRae. So you start to see other teams obviously copy the system because they had players that were playing at Collingwood that were practicing and, that knew the system very well. So they just gave over all these secrets. And then you add that into account and it's like, well, so many things really just pushed us backwards, right? Like, it felt like pretty overwhelming. And to me, I will think that, not just in footy, but in life as well, like when things are happening very quickly around you and you're basically playing catch up and you're confused, so many things are changing, the rules changing, and then somehow they adapted differently to us as well. Like, it just, all these factors just kept adding up, but yet the club never faltered. Yet, especially Craig McRae never faltered. He kept believing, kept level head. And it just gives me confidence, right, for the future that this is the guy that we need, to lead the club forward. A lot of players stepped up, when they needed to. And again, like until we started to get our players back from injury, that's when you really saw that we can play our best footy still. But it is what it is. It's, it's just one of those things where you look back on it and go, yes, a lot of things went wrong. Even at club level with, Graham White obviously taking sabbatical and now he's leaving as well. So a lot of things, just didn't go our way. And that's okay. I think that's genuinely okay. I think sometimes in life, you got to go through this patch. If you really think about it, under Craig McRae, it's always been on the up. Everything's been on the up. Since he came in 2022, everything's been on the up. Slowly, we were getting better. Slowly. And then we made a prelim in his first year. Sure, we lost that, but it's still a good effort. Like, it's like now the Hawks, right? If Hawthorn makes a prelim from here, doesn't matter if they lose. They know it's a great season, considering where they were at the start of the year. Just like Craig McRae in 2022. Where we were at the start of the year, everything was just on the up. Even though we lost that game, it wasn't a dip because it was like, okay, now we go again next year. And then 2023, which is one of the greatest years of my life, I'll never forget that. We just kept going up and up and up and up. And I think this was the test, right? This year was that, that rock bottom sort of feeling, right? That we haven't had under Craig McRae. We've been so blessed. Like, if we're really honest, we have been so bloody blessed with what we've been able to experience as football fans, as Collingwood fans. The way Craig McRae came in and just emphasised the side-by-side message and what it means, what it stands for, your heart and soul, and being in black and white. And he embraced it. He embraced it in a way where it made it easier for the players to embrace it, and it made it easier for a lot of fans. Don't get me wrong, a lot of fans still are a bit, whatever about it. They cringe at that kind of stuff. But that's fine. Everyone's going to react in different ways. Everyone's going to feed off different types of energies, different type of things. But at the end of the day, you really look at it and you go, okay, we needed this season, right? We needed a season where things did start to go horribly wrong, right? Whether it's umpiring, whether it's injuries, whether, it's premiership hangover, whatever it is, that reality check sometimes in the long term gives you, I wouldn't say an edge, gives you a sort of conviction that, okay, is this really what you want? Is this what you, what does this mean to you? What does it all really, really mean to you? And I think we needed that. And I think now, Craig McRae and the players and the club will have a better idea from top to bottom, whether it's in the, top of the hierarchy, whether it's CEO, presidents, or whether it's the players, whether it's, the people that are doing, the casual jobs there, whoever it is, right? All these people now have been put under that pressure, and now they know, okay, how much does this mean to us? And towards the end of the year, you saw that we were playing our best footy again, right? We shouldn't have beat Brisbane. People would have, wouldn't have never said that we were going to beat Brisbane, and we beat them, and it was an amazing game, and I was there, and I'll never forget it. And so it's like, you know what? You can't, even though it is a negative that we didn't make finals, it's a good test, right? I think if we made finals this year, whether we win it or not, I think we would have tanked out. After next year, it would have fell apart. Whereas now, we had that off year, we had that rock bottom. Now we've got to climb back up, right? When you already reached the peak of the mountain, you can't just reach the peak of the mountain again, right? It doesn't work that way. You kind of go through, you have to go through those ups and downs. And this year was our down, and we had ups and downs this year again. But overall, I do think long term it'll be better for us. Hopefully, it is more, I'm coming from more of a hopeful standpoint, but I'd rather, face next season onwards knowing we know what to expect now, right? We know there are teams out there that are playing the same footy as us. We know there are, we'll adapt to the rule changes and, adapt the game style, that we need depending on the team we're versing or whatever it is. A lot of things you'll be better prepared for when you're actually ahead of it rather than catching up to it. So I don't know, like, to me, maybe it's because on a personal level, we beat the teams that I really wanted us to beat. But overall, as a score for the year, if I was to rate our season, I would actually say that we would be sitting at I don't know, it might be harsh to give, it might be a bit too much to say, okay, at a 7 out of 10. But I'm going to go with a 7 out of 10 because I really think that considering the circumstances, right, and how the season started with 3-0 and all these other stuff, we actually came back into it. We actually came, we finished the season strong, and that's all I really wanted at the end. Even if we didn't make finals, I'm like, let's just finish strong, right? Beat the teams that are in front of us. Show that, all right, we're not just going to bow out like losers. We bow out like champions, like winners, like premiership winners, right? And that to me told me, all right, this is going in the right direction. Absolutely the right direction. So yeah, I think overall this season, I would give it a 7 out of 10. A lot of people will think, nah, that's way too much. Maybe a 6.5, obviously for not making finals. But I got that feeling that things will get better, right? I got hope. I got hope from it. And you look at teams like Carlton where they did make the finals and then they got smashed for most of the game, where they'll feel pretty flat about that. Whereas, I don't know, for me personally, I feel flat that I'm not watching my team playing finals. But at the same time, it is kind of nice to just chill out and not be overly stressed about the finals game, especially after last year, like incredible final series. So, you've got to look at the positive and negative of the whole situation as well. And I think overall, it really wasn't that bad of a season. It could have been better, absolutely, but I just feel like we're in the right position, right? We had that rock bottom period. Now it's time to go on the up. Now it's time to, every player knows how much this means to them now, right? It's easier to be proud and happy and everything when things are going right and you're successful. It's when you're down that you really find out. And especially as the coach, Craig McRae, he would know now. He would know which players are willing to take that next level to improve and step up, and which players are, that might get sucked into where we are and everything else that's going around them. And that's really what you want to see overall. But yeah, I will give this season a 7 out of 10. Again, some people might think that's too much, but to me, given how the season started, given all the compounding factors that went wrong, we still finished 9th, right? That is, and it was just like, we were out on percentage, right? So given everything, it wasn't too bad of a season. Maybe 6.5 might be a bit more thing, but to me, because we beat Carlton twice and Brisbane twice, who are two teams that I really wanted us to beat, that's why I'm giving it a 7. I thought if we lost to Carlton, I might have given it a 6, right? But because we won those games that I really wanted us to win, for me personally, 7 out of 10, and we look forward to the future. And that's about it for the season review. Now let's get right into the player and coach rating for the year. Okay, we're back, and here we are. We'll begin the ratings, from number 1 to the rest. Obviously, some players won't really get a rating just because they didn't feature enough during the season. But let's get right into it. So Patrick Lipinski, I actually thought Lipinski carried a little bit of momentum from last year. He was good and pretty. Lipinski for me, his biggest issue is his speed, and maybe his tackling pressure isn't always great. That's it. Everything else, I think this guy has got, right. He's a good player. He's good around the ball. I thought compared to last year, he had a better season, especially in front of goal. I thought he did really well in those positions and areas. When we're playing the attacking half, I think he really does step up a lot. Maybe defensively, he's not a two-way defender, but I do think he had a pretty good season. I think I'll give him a 7.5 out of 10. I think Lipinski could have been better. Obviously, I thought he would step it up a little bit more, but overall, not too bad of a season. You can't really be angry at him. He was pretty consistent throughout the year, and you have to know what to expect from him to really value the attributes that he brings forward. So yeah, I think a 7.5. Yeah, sounds about right. I think 7.5. We'll move on forward. Jordan De Goey, interrupted season, not always ideal. That will affect the score. But I think when he was in, he was a very important player. Contributed a lot. I can't really give him a harsh score. If I'm giving Lipinski 7.5, I'll have to give De Goey 7.7. 7.7. I think, obviously won us a game off his boot. I think it was against Adelaide. So that was a pretty big performance. But again, a lot of injuries, riddled season for a lot of players in this list. So can't put him too highly. But yeah, I think a 7.7. Obviously 2023 was a much better year for him. Not a lot of players had a much better year than 2023, but yeah, again, we'll move forward with a 7.7 for Geordie. All right, Quaynor. Now, Quaynor is a difficult one because I'll be honest, at the start of the year, I was having big issues, man. I was like, he lost it. Like, he really did look like he fell off a cliff. But he started to get better as the season went on, and I think there were some games where I feel like he really stepped up. That Brisbane game comes to mind where he did that amazing tackle on Zach Bailey right towards the end, potentially winning us the game. So I do think, like a lot of players on this list, he did get better as the season went on, but I just thought the start of his season was really off. Really, really off. But again, because he did improve at the end, if he didn't show that improvement towards the end, I would have given him a 5. But I think I'm gonna go for a 6 out of 10. I do think he showed signs towards the end of the year that he was back, he was ready to go again. Fortunately, we didn't make finals, but I would have been really interested to see how his final campaign would have looked like. I did think he stepped up a lot towards the end, but yeah, again, in a year where we didn't make finals, you can't really give too much of a high rating. I think a 6 out of 10 makes sense to me. I might put Lipinski down, actually, now that I think about it, maybe to a 7. I might give him a 7. Because if I'm giving Quaino a 6... Actually, no, I'll stick with my guns. Yeah, as I said, Lipinski 7.5, Degoe 7.7, and Quaino, I'll give him a 6. I do think the first half of the year, especially, he gave away so many goals and things went really, really wrong in and around him. But again, it was a tough year for most people. But yeah, we'll move on. Maynard. Now, Braden, I actually thought Braden had a pretty solid season. I genuinely do. I think he was pretty consistent across last year and this year. I don't think he was better than last year, but then again, the whole team was performing a lot better last year, so it's easier to look like you're not as good. But I feel like he was consistent. I really don't feel like he dropped off. You know, I just think the whole team dropped off because of injuries and other factors, especially in defense. You know, losing Murphy was damn near catastrophic for us. So yeah, I think he's had a pretty decent season now. I wouldn't give him a super high rating. But I think he was solid. I really do think he was solid. I don't want to give him an 8 because not quite there. I'll give him a 7.9, right? I know these are like, you know, little decimal differences, but I think it reflects it well. 7.9, you know, it wasn't a great season by his standards. Last year I would have given him a 8.5, even 8.7, 8.8. But yeah, I think by his standard, definitely could be a lot better. But again, he was pretty consistent. I really can't fault him. Yeah, I'll give him a 7.9 for Bruzzy. All right, number 5, Jamie Elliott. Now, Elliott obviously had an interrupted season. It's pretty harsh to really give him a score this year. I might avoid giving him a score just because I don't think he played enough footy this year. He did have an off year, so I'm just going to give him a standard 5 just because it was an interrupted season. It's really difficult. Tom Mitchell, same thing, interrupted season, 5 out of 10. You know, you can't really... Essentially a non-rating. But yeah, we move forward. Good old Josh Dacos. I thought Josh did okay this year. Obviously had a role difference, a lot of role changes this year because of backline and, you know, needing to makeshift a lot of areas and stuff. He's been pretty solid on the wing for a couple of years now, but obviously, again, like, it's going to be really hard to give any of these players. There's only maybe a couple that I can think of that really stepped up from last year, but again, in a season where everything just went wrong and players are injured in and out, no one's going to be able to perform at the absolute best. We only saw our players play at the absolute best towards the end, where most of the team was back in. But having said that, I do think Josh was pretty solid. You know, he wasn't amazing, wasn't incredible, but I think he was pretty solid. I'll give him a 7. I'll give him a 7, I think. A 7 out of 10 is fair for him. I do think... I don't know, actually, because if I'm giving Lipinski 7.5, I can't give it Josh Taker. I'll give him, you know, I'll give him a 7.5. He'll be a 7.5. Same as Lipinski. I thought he was good in good areas, but in some areas, obviously a bit lacking defensively and whatnot. But I thought he did really well off halfback, so I think a 7 is pretty fair. 7.5, sorry, it's pretty fair. Now, Lucky Shields. A lot of people very controversial about this guy. You know, he's one of those players that... Look, you got to understand who he is as a player and what he brings. A lot of people are still pissed off that, you know, we gave up getting him for him and a first rounder. But to me, I feel like he had an okay season. The fact is, he finished second in Coleman, right? He was the second highest goal scorer in that team behind Bobby Hill. That's really good, considering this is his first season with us, right? So you can't really fault him from that perspective. His pressure was amazing. The only real issue I had with him is his kicking. Sometimes he shanks the ball a lot. You know, there was so many times where I remember being through on goal and his kick is just that little bit off and doesn't really make it through. But overall, it's really hard to judge this guy. I'm going to give him a 7. I did think he was pretty solid. Like, considering that he came into a team that had a premiership hangover, that, you know, injuries in and out, no consistency in the team. But I'm going to give him a 7, especially because towards the end, he literally won us that game against Brisbane. You know, at the MCG, and I thought he really stepped up that game and announced himself in a way. And, just look like, okay, you know what? You can look forward to the future with this guy, especially when you got your Bo McCreary's playing, your Schultz, your Bobby Hills, and then we have the Pauls in there. Suddenly, it's cooking. Suddenly, that forward line is just high pressure, energy, pressure, tackle. So I do think later on we'll see a lot more from him and we'll get rewarded. And I think we already have. That Brisbane game itself showed that he can win a game off his boot. So yeah, I'll give him a 7. Obviously, it wasn't a fantastic season, but he still finished second in a Coleman race, and we can't really. Yeah, I think a 7 is fair. I think a 7. Some people will rate him a bit lower, but I think a 7 is fair considering the season we had. I thought he looked a lot better as the season went on, and as we started to get more consistency with the same players playing. Basically, when you get 3 or 4 players out of a team in 1 week, and that's almost constantly happening week in, week out, where 2 or 3 players are leaving the team, and then two other three are coming back in. It's really hard to have that chemistry link up as well as you could, especially in a team where players play their role. It's a system-based style of gameplay and stuff like that. So it was really tough for him, man. It was really tough for him. I can't really fault him or his effort. I think he put his best foot forward and played his heart out basically week in, week out. So I think a 7 is pretty fair for him. Johnny Noble, who obviously we just found out not long ago that he wants to lower off. Now, I'll get more into the trade rumours and stuff in another video, but yeah, pretty unfortunate. I did think he had probably his best season for us. I thought it was pretty good. Now, Noble, the thing about him is he does a lot of things right. He really does, but there are sometimes he just rushes decisions, and he had a point to prove this year, and unfortunately, he couldn't win a premiership last year with the team. Markov got that position over him, but I thought he was good. In terms of rating, he stepped up in a few games, but I can't really give him that high of a rating. I'll give him a 7.4. I thought he was better than the like of Schultz, but I think a 7.4. He didn't have an extraordinary season, but he did step up in a lot of games. He did show that he can contribute that role of halfback and do really well. I'll be really interested to see him on the wing. We'll get into that in another video where I do want to talk about player positioning and things that we can change and tweak that can actually improve us. Quick McRae talks a lot about the magnets don't matter. Sometimes they do. Sometimes not necessarily the player itself, but sometimes some players might be better positioned up forward rather than thing. We'll get into that in another video. But yeah, I think Noble 7.4. Wasn't an over the top extraordinary. Did he have a better season? You know what? I'll give him a 7.5 because I think maybe with Lipinski, if I'm giving Lipinski 7.5, then I think John Noble is only fair that he also gets a 7.5. So yeah, we'll do that for him. Pendlebury. Look, I can't really fault Pendles. Like he was carrying an shoulder injury, for a good chunk of the year, especially against the Carlton game and a couple of other games. But I mean, look, man, this guy, the longevity, the mentality, the attitude, the composure. I mean, you see him play now, and you look at his debut year, and you think, wow, he's still playing just as good, if not better. Amazing player. Didn't have the year that I thought he would. He did start really well, actually. He was getting a lot of touches, a lot of the ball, playing more midfield again, and I thought he did really well. And the fact that he broke, he got 400 games, and I was at that game as well, and I thought he had a good year. I'm going to be a bit biased because he broke records, all right? 10,000 disposals. I was at that game, 10,000 touches just last year, and like this guy is breaking records left and right, and he keeps doing it, and I would back him genuinely for another 2 years. I'm going to give Pendles an 8, a solid 8 out of 10. Given the year that we had, again, I'm considering the compounding factors. I could be very harsh on this and go, we didn't make finals, everything went wrong, that's it, I'm going to be really... But no, I'm going to take into account that all these factors did matter. And so based on these factors, how did they perform? What did they do? How did they put the best foot forward? Did they try their best? And Pendlebury never, ever lacked in that department. So I'll give him a solid 8 out of 10. Danny McStay, now, I can't really rate him too much. Again, he came in right towards the end of the season, but I thought he did really well. I thought once he came in, we finally looked like we had a person that can mark the ball off the ground and push forward from there. I thought like Kruger, he did a good job in that area, but He butchers the ball a lot, Kruger. So sometimes when he marks the ball off the ground, and if you're not a good kick, you'll turn it over, which is kind of worse. But McStay, we'll give him a solid 5.5 out of 10, right? I don't want to give him just a basic 5, but I do think he did contribute towards the end of the year, but obviously not enough games to really judge him off it. But yeah, 5.5 for McStay. I look forward to next year, what he can bring. I do think, hopefully, if he stays injury-free, he's building muscle, he looks better, he's moving better. I'm really excited for what this guy brings. If I was to judge him just on those standalone games, I'll probably give him a 7. But the fact is, he only played a few games towards the end of the year, so you can't really judge a player on that because a lot happens in the year. So, Mark Carmichael, unfortunately, retired. Di Maria doesn't play AFL. Darcy Cameron, now, this guy, I swear to God, like, he stepped up. Like, he's one of those players this year that you can, without a doubt, say has improved a lot on last year, right? He had the right mentality. He approached it the right way, and he showed. It really showed. I'll give him a solid, very solid 8.5. I genuinely think he was a better player. He'll definitely finish at least top 3 in the Coleman, maybe even top 2. So definitely think Darcy Cameron, absolutely one of our better players this year. A solid 8.5 for him. I look forward to seeing what he does next year. I do think that he's a great ruckman, and he does things that a lot of, like, up forward, he kicks goals from the bloody pockets like it's nothing. And he's that player, man. He goes under the radar, but he's a very good footballer, understands football really well, really good kicking. For his height and everything, he does a great job. And yeah, I can't find him at all. Darcy Cameron, 8.5, legend. Kruger came in obviously for, just a short patch, but I thought he did well. I thought he genuinely did well. Again, he didn't play enough this season for me, but I'll give him a 5.4. 5.4 out of 10. I think that's fair. Just because he didn't play enough. If I was to judge him solely on the games that he did play, I would give him maybe a 6.5. There are areas that he does need to improve in, but my God, effort is not one of them. Like, this guy just gives everything every single time, and players like that, you want them around. You absolutely do. But yeah, again, not too great of a season. Didn't get a long enough run to really judge him off that. So we'll move on. Allen, again, only played the one game, but for that game alone, I'll give him a 7.5. But you can't really judge him. I'll give him a basic 5 out of 10. But I really, really liked his game against Melbourne. I thought he performed really, really well. I mean, the fact that he got over 20 touches in that game and contributed a goal and just did awesome. I look forward to this guy. See more of him, Allen, next year. But yeah, we'll give him a basic 5.5 out of 10. Frampton, now this one is a tough one. This one is genuinely a tough one because people look at Frampton in two different ways, right? Either you love him or you go, he's a spud. There's no in between. You either love him or he's a spud. Some people love him and think he's a spud. I think he's genuinely getting better. I do. I think his problem is he always starts game slow on the back foot, like sort of always catching up to the forward. But once he gets that momentum, he starts to get better as the game goes on. I've noticed that a lot. If you watch a lot of the games this year, you'll notice as the game goes on, whoever the forward he's on, he's shutting them down. Like, he does a really great job. I thought this year our absolute best backline was Moore, Frampton, and Howe. When we had these three in the backline, our backline looked stable. Right, Howe was a great cover for Murphy, and then it allowed Darcy Moore, and then you put Frampton in between the experience of Moore and Howe. You got that balance, right? You got the right balance of athleticism, speed, height, and experience. So I do think that worked. I did not think, we'll get into him later, I did not think Charlie Dean worked as well. But again, Frampton, if I was to give him a rating, I'd actually give him like I wouldn't say 7, but I'll give him a 6.9. Probably a good reflection of him, but I think a 6.9. I'm tempted to boost that to a 7 because I genuinely think, considering the season we had, he still did alright, but obviously a lot of room for improvement. I won't give him a 7 but again, you can't really fault him for a lot of things went wrong, but there are games where he did step up, and again, you've got to remember with him, he was drafted as a forward. I still think, personally, he's a forward. Like, I think he wants to be a forward. It's just that we've been playing him in defense out of necessity. But yeah, I think it's 6.9 for Frampton. Nothing too big, nothing too small. I think just about right. But yeah, all right. Next up is Finn McRae. I thought he did all right. I won't spend too much time on him. I did think he did all right. Sometimes butchers the ball. He's able to score goals. Good in the middle, but sometimes that's just kind of, chuck it forward. And I think Craig McRae had a big problem with that at some point. I'll give him a 5.5 out of 10. I didn't think it was extraordinary. I didn't think, and that's the thing is that, when you don't get a consistent run in the team, you're never going to be able to really look better than, what you're playing. Especially when you're going between VFL, AFL, it is very difficult, so I can't really fault him for that. But yeah, like I said, hasn't really had a big season. 5.5, pretty fair, I think. 2 Giants now, again, only played like the one game or whatever it was, so I can't really judge him. We'll give him a basic 5, but I do think he was pretty good in that game as well. Looking forward to what this guy can do. I do think he's a good player, and he's got a good future. Lewis Smith, obviously mid-season draft, looking forward to what he can do. Future years, Oscar Steen, no. Now, Sidebottom. Now, here's a guy that I have a lot to say about. Look, still Sidebottom to me is one of my favourite players of all time. Very underrated player. Just does things with the footy, and his vision is on another level. And he's one of those players where I was talking before about the magnets. You need him to shift off. I thought him playing after halfback was a terrible idea. I don't think he's very defensively... Like, don't get me wrong. He puts pressure. He puts effort. But I think he's a trickster, right? He's got that trickster in him as a footy player. And those players, to me, got to be up forward. They have to be up forward. Play him as a high half forward that gets up the ground and connects the ball inside 50. That's a lot of this year. We were missing that player that can, other than Dacos or Pendles, that can really just deliver that kick inside 50 that worked. And you saw it against the North Melbourne game where so many times he was inside 50 for whatever reason, and he'll just give that perfect kick across to Bobby Hill, or, in so many games where he just stepped up. I think he's got goals in him as well. I would love to see him play more in the forward line. But having said that, just a consistent player. I didn't think he had a bad, terrible year or anything like that. I would actually give it a season. I would give him a 7.9. I would also give him a 7.9. I did think he had a really good season. Played some midfield time as well, other than the back line. He's really good on the wing, but I do think that because of his age and stuff like that, the wingers nowadays, like look at Gordon, you look at Josh Kelly, these wingers that are just so fast and, it's very hard to keep up with. I do think would benefit a lot from Sidebottom playing it in the forward line, but having said that, there's a reason why he plays on the wing, is because we usually lack wingers, right? But yeah, I'll give him a 7.9. I think he might have been able to crack 8 if there was another game, because I really liked his game in the midfield. I thought he did really well. But yeah, 7.9. Can't really give him too much other than that. And we'll move on. Bobby Hill. Now, Bobby Hill's one of my favourite players. Absolutely legend. The way he stepped up last year was incredible. And I did think that at the start of this year, you can really see he was trying to play that team game a little bit too much for me. Just always trying to pass it off when he could have had a shot. And it's a good thing. It's a great quality having a player. Don't get me wrong. You don't want players to be selfish. But at the same time, you got to know when to go for it. You really do. Having said that, he's our top goal scorer for the season, right? I can't give him anything less than 8 because he did step up in a lot of games as well. But yeah, look, obviously given how the season went, it's not going to be ideal. But again, top goal scorer for the year. Put in the effort every single week. Can't fault him. 8 out of 10 for Bobby. Good old Bobby. Jacob Ryan came in a little bit. Can't really rate him. Jack Chris, again, this is another player, just like Sidebottom. I think he belongs up forward, man. This guy is 6'3". He can move around like he's 5'10", and just ferocious pressure player. Scored a lot of goals this year as well. I think he's definitely in like top 5, top 10 goal scorers of the year. So as a midfielder, he's done a really good job. Did he improve on last year? I don't think so. But again, it's really hard to judge that in a season where a lot of players, were playing catch up. But I would give him, if I gave Sidebottom 7.9, I would give him a 7.8. I do think he was pretty good. But there were some areas where sometimes he gets caught flat in a way. And teams just kind of run through him. But again, I think he stepped up in a lot of games. I would say 7.8, sorry. 7.8. I do think Sidebottom had a slightly better season. But Chris, he's a good player, solid player. You know what you're getting with him. And yeah, 7.8. I think that's pretty fair. McInnes, can't really judge him. Didn't play that much, but I would love to see this guy play more. I was really pissed that he didn't get enough game time. But yeah, it is what it is. We'll move on. Bytel, again, played just very few games. Can't really judge him too much, but based on the games he's played, I'd probably give him like a 6.5. Murphy, unfortunately, retired. God knows how much we needed him. Richards. Now, Jay Richards, I did think he looked alright, man. I did think he looked really good at times, and he's got a good future on him, even though he's a bit older, but he does have a good future on him. I think he's a good player. Based on the games that he did play, I'll probably give him 6.6. You know, he was pretty solid. He was actually pretty solid for a first year, even though he's a mature age recruit. I thought he did well, and obviously there's rumours of him going to Port Adelaide. Do I want that? Do I not? Now, I don't know. It just depends on how the off-season goes. We'll talk about the trade stuff later on. But yeah, I'll give him 6.6 based on the games he plays. But again, not enough to really judge him. So I'll just give him basic 5 out of 10. Darcy Moore, now, look, Moore this year had there's no doubt at the start of the year he was off, right? You can just tell he could not spoil the ball. He could not mark the ball. It took him a long time to get going this year. And it's unfortunate because if he was peaking early, and if he was playing his best footy, I think a lot of those results would have went our way. But again, in a year where a lot of things went wrong, we lost Murphy, the back line's suddenly unstable, he's got to take on a bigger workload. I'll give him a 7. I'll give him a 7 out of 10. I did think the second half of his year was a lot better, and he started to really pick up his stats again and get going again. And, you know, he did stick by that side-by-side measure, which we love here on the side-by-side footy show. So I'll give him a solid 7 out of 10. I do think the second half of his year was better. I think if he dropped off still in the second half, I would have given him a 6. But I think 7, you know what, he did alright. In the end, it was okay. It wasn't too bad. Still stepped up in the big games where we needed him. And yes, we didn't make finals. But again, I'm going to judge him based on those games where he did do well, as much as I'm going to judge him on the games where he did badly. I think 7 is right where he should be at. Out of 10. I do think the second half of this year was really, really good. Bo McCreary. Now, this guy, when we lost him, I knew, he's going to be a big difference. The pressure on our forward line. Bro, as soon as this guy came back into the team, our forward line looked completely different. I can't speak highly enough of this guy. He's got such a great future on him. God bless him, because honestly, he's a really good player. Really, really good player. Just moves on the turf it's just natural, right? I've not seen many players that can do what he does. Obviously, his goal scoring wise, didn't score a lot, didn't do too much. He did win us the game in the end. He scored the winning goal against Brisbane. I just think we look so much better with him in the side, so much better. Our forward line functions so much better with him in the side. So I'll give Bo. I can't give him too high of a rating. Because obviously he was injured for a good patch of the year. I'll give him a 7.5. I think he's 7.5. I do think when he was playing, he was an influential player, right? You felt his presence. You felt like he impacted games. Absolutely love his work, Bo. Will Hoskin Elliott. Now, this guy is probably one of the most underrated footballers you'll ever talk about. Genuinely so underrated. He was out injured early. He came back into that team. We look so much better. Wilbur, there's so much you can say about him. He can play anywhere. You can play him in defense. You can play him in forward line. You can even play him in the mid, right? And he just steps up. He knows what he's doing. Great football IQ. I can't give him anything less than an 8. I really can't. I thought in a season where a lot went wrong, he was one of those shining players. Him along with Darcy Cameron and others, which we'll get into. I really thought he stepped up. I really thought he did really, really well this season. 8 out of 10. Absolutely. Sullivan, again, didn't play a lot, but he didn't have a patch in the middle. So based on the games that he did play, look, I'll probably obviously kicked his first goal against Carlton, which is awesome. But I will give him a 6.1 out of 10. I think he's a decent player, but I did like him coming off as a sub more than him playing a full game. But that's also because he's not played AFL level, right? So he does tend to burn out as the game goes on. Obviously, he made the mistake of handing the ball over to Nick Dacos instead of the referee in the Fremantle game, which did cost us that game. But you can't really fault him. I mean, the fact that the referee goes, okay, this is a first-year player playing AFL footy, and you pay that, one of the most disgraceful calls I've ever seen in my life. Can't really fault him for that. But I did think he did all right. I do think he's okay. But when he does get tired, he turns the ball over a lot. I did notice that. So 6 points. I'll give him a 6. I'll give him a 6 out of 10. 6 out of 10. All right. Josh Ear doesn't play. Now here is the guy that's probably going to get the highest rating. Everyone knows it. Everyone knew it. Nick Dacos. Like, what can you say about this guy that's not already been said? And like, what a player. What a bloody player, man. Some of his highlights this year, like, in a lot of ways, topped last year. It really did. He's probably, him and Darcy Cameron, even Hoskin Elliott as well. I thought those were the three players that just looked levels above what they were last year as well. And in a season where the team didn't have that, it highlights it even more. Obviously we didn't make finals. That's the factor that I really have to think. If we made finals, I wouldn't give this guy less than a 9.5 out of 10. But given we didn't make finals, given a lot of things went wrong, I'll give him a 9. 9 out of 10, right? I think he's going to be the Coleman medalist, right? He might even win the Brownlow or, tie it up. Who knows? But we'll see. But I do think he was just incredible, man. Like, when we needed him to step up, he stepped up. When we needed him to kick goals, he kicked goals. When we needed him to, there's so many areas of the game where this guy just pops up and he just starts going nuts, man. And he's one of the hardest players to stop. And love watching Nick Dacos, man. Such a big fan of him. And you can't give him anything less than a 9. Honestly, you cannot give him anything less than a 9. He's such a good player. 9 out of 10 for good old Nick. Harvey Harrison, again, didn't play that much for me to really judge him, but I'll probably give him a basic 5 out of 10. I did think he looked good in the forward line. I did like him in the forward line a lot more than like a Sullivan. I did think he should get more midfield time, but yeah, we'll see what happens with him. Markov, again, in and out of the year. I did think he had a pretty off year. Obviously, he had a baby, which probably also took a lot off his mind, footy-wise and stuff. I'll give him a basic 5 out of 10. Didn't really see enough of him, and at the start of the year, he looked pretty off. He looked really, really off. I could be a lot harsher, but I think a 5, just a basic 5. Howe was one of our most important players this year. Whether a lot of people realise it or not, he was so important for us. Not just in defence, but up forward as well. When we needed him to step up, he stepped up. I recall that Gold Coast game where he went up forward to kick the goal, and I thought to myself, put him in the back line now. As soon as he kicked that goal against Gold Coast, I'm like, put him in the back line now. They kept him up forward. What do you know? Gold Coast go down the other end and they kick a goal and they win the game. This guy, I can't even explain how good he is. One of the most underrated players I've ever seen. Just can play. I genuinely think you can play this guy in the ruck, in the midfield, up forward, on the wing, wherever you want, and he'll deliver. Like, he just got such a high footy IQ that you don't really see from a player like him, from his height and everything else. Don't get me wrong, a lot of players are great, but I really think he's underrated, man. Unfortunately, injury did impact him during the season, so his score can't be too high, but I'm still going to give him an 8. I really do. I really think that in the second half of the year especially, he stepped up. He's always stepped up. Whenever he's in the team, he does well. Right? That's just a fact. Whenever he's in the team, he really does well. He's one of those players to me, again, that just, when we needed him to do well, he did well. Up forward, down back. I thought it was clutch in the last couple of games in defense. And I really think that's probably where we need him right now, is unless we can get another defender in, tall defender in, then we can play him up forward. But I do think he gets more injured up forward because of the high work rate that the forwards have. So I would rather him in the back line for now, just because I think it's a lighter load. But yeah, 8 out of 10 for Jeremy Howe. One of the more underrated players in my opinion. Love his work. 8 out of 10. Johnson didn't really feature. 5 out of 10. Mychek, again, injured, riddled year. Not great. In and out of the team for the whole year. Like, never really got a look in. We'll give him a 5.5. Charlie Dean. God, I had my problems with this guy, let me tell you. I mean, don't get me wrong. I do think he's a good footballer. I think he understands how to kick a footy. I think he understands a lot of football stuff. But the one thing he cannot do is read the ball when he's behind play. Like, as in, when his forward is in front of him, he gets lost. Like, he's literally lost. Unless he's playing in front of the man, he gets absolutely lost, right? It was one of those things where I was saying it all year, stop playing this guy in defense. I genuinely love to see him up forward because he plays better in front than in behind. And the way we defensively set up, we often require those players in behind that are zoning and pushing up. He doesn't do that well. He doesn't zone well. I think his man-on-man isn't great. I think he's a player that I genuinely want him to be played up forward. I think he can contribute a lot up forward, more than in defense. VFL to AFL is a big jump, especially when you're talking about the forward lines, right? The forwards in the AFL are just on another level that VFL forwards don't really get to. And I just think he struggled. I really do. I really think he struggled in the back line. There were so many times. That Gold Coast game where he'd push up way too high, over the top, there through, on goal. So many games. North game as well. He really did cost us a lot of goals this year. I can't even, like I said, I do like him in front when he's playing in front. I do think he's a very skilled footballer. He knows how to kick a footy well, move the ball well and everything. In transition, great. When he has a ball in hand, I like his work. I like what he does. But when he's defending from behind, bro, the amount of times the ball would drop here and then he'll just be punching here. It's if you can't read the ball drop, you should not be playing backline. It's really that simple, especially in a zone defense backline where, you have to read the ball well. Otherwise, you have to read the ball drop. Otherwise, you're just out of it completely. I'm going to give him a 4.5. It's a hard score, and he didn't play that much, but I really thought that there were games where we lost because of his contribution, I think. And again, I can't really fault him because it was a makeshift backline, right? And he just came straight in, and you can't really fault players like that, but I think there was some stuff that he was doing where I'm like, bro, if you can't read where the ball's dropping every time, if you watch the games over and over again, you'll see it. He just doesn't read it well at all. So yeah, I do think I'd love to see him up forward, but in defense, I'm just not a big fan. Maybe he'll improve. Don't get me wrong. You only get better from these positions, and you learn to read the ball drops better and stuff. And I hope he gets there. But at the moment, I just don't think he's near it. 4.5. A bit harsh, probably, but yeah, I don't know. I did think he cost us some games this year. Ned Long came in towards the end of the year. I do like this player, man. I think there's a good future being built here with him. He might, if Nick Dacos is not captain at some point, he might also be captain Long. But really liked him. I thought he was solid. I'll give him a 6. I'll give him a 6 out of 10. I did think he was solid. Kicked a few goals here and there. Look forward to what he can bring, but again, not enough games to really judge him. Parker, same thing. He actually did alright. I'll give him a 5.5, Parker. I thought he wasn't too bad where we needed him to be. Did some mistakes and stuff like that, but I really like his tackling pressure. I like the way he approaches the game. He goes for it and doesn't really hesitate, which is really good. But yeah, 5.5, nothing too long. Alright, finally, Mason Cox. Whew, this has been a long video. Mason Cox. Now, I do think Mason did well. I thought he did as best he could. Obviously, he slowed down a lot. You can just see the way he moves. It's just not as quick as he was. Isn't able to get a lot of separation. And even when he does, there's just so many players on him that are jumping on his back that, it's hard for him to take a mark. I'll give him a 6 out of 10. I really can't give him more than that. I thought last year he was good. I think last year I would have given him a 7.5. I thought he was amazing in the ruck. Came clutch for us in the ruck, to be honest, towards last year. But again, injury riddled season, things went wrong, didn't go right, and then I can't really give him too much high of a score. I think a 6 out of 10 may be fair. But yeah, that's it for the player ratings. Now let's finish off with the coach. All right, now here is the man, the legend, Craig McRae. Look, God, in a year where everything went wrong off the field, where, whether it's injuries, whether it's premiership hangovers, whether it's all these roles being changed, in the club and Graham White and all this stuff, Craig McRae probably did the best job anyone on earth could have done in that position. I can't even explain to you how much I back this guy. I would literally cry when he leaves Collingwood. I'm hoping he stays until his daughters grow up and become premiership players at Collingwood. I really never want him to leave the club. He's been such a great revolution since he's come in. He's changed the whole club, the attitude and who he is as a person. If you meet him and, I've heard so many great stories about how he is, who he is. Very humble, grounded, very heart and soul type of person. And absolutely, in every way, I thought, given how bad the year went, as a coach, all you can do is just, the factors that you can't control, like injuries, like umpiring, stuff off the field, with the club departments and all that stuff. He can't control these things. But the stuff that he did control, I thought he did a great job. I really do. And even though we didn't make finals, and a lot of people would be like, well, that's stupid, I still give him an 8 out of 10. I will give him an 8 out of 10 for the season. I really thought that his press conferences always hit the spot for me. Like, always, like, exactly what I was feeling after the game. He always makes me feel better because he's reflecting the truth of it, right? He's highlighting the things that were right, that were true, etc. Now, don't get me wrong, I do think he made some mistakes, especially with selections sometimes, that might have cost us a game here or two. But overall, bro, like, if you're an AFL fan, you'll be thinking, God, I wish we had Craig McRae, because he's such a revolutionary guy. Like, he genuinely changed the game. Like, teams are starting to play like Collingwood did over the last few years because of him, and that's just going to keep happening, right? He's changed the game. It's become a zone defense game, right? Either you zone defense the back end, which is a back line and a little bit up top, or you zone defense the middle, right? He goes the back end, but it's become that, right? Two philosophies. There's no more one-on-one. There's no such thing as one-on-one anymore, right? Only like maybe Port do that, West Coast do that. Not a lot of teams play the one-on-one game anymore because it's just gone. You cannot play that game anymore, and that's why West Coast is struggling. That's why Richmond is struggling. That's why North is struggling, because they still play that one-on-one game. And yeah, I just think that the game has changed so much since this guy's come in. Especially, like, he's just everything you want in a coach. Genuinely, everything you want in a person and a human being. So I do think genuinely 8 out of 10 might seem like, oh, well, he's still, last year I would have given him 11 out of 10, right? He was incredible last year. But I still think, despite the circumstances, he did the absolute best he could. And the fact is, in a year where it went horribly wrong, he still got us to 9th on percentage, right? And we beat the team that was on top of us twice. And, everyone knows for a fact, if Collingwood did make finals, we might have won that Brisbane game, Like, I just think he's changed us so much, and he's someone that we should celebrate more and more and more as time goes on. And I think as time goes on, people will recognise his greatness, and will recognise he will go down in history as a coach, not just as a coach, as a player as well. Remember, this guy won 3 premierships. He knows how to win. He's not a loser. I love Craig McRae. I genuinely do. One of the rare men in the world that I genuinely look up to, and I go, you know what, this is a role model. This guy is a genuine role model for people. For players, for humans. Love his work. I just think, maybe it's a bit biased because of who he is as a person, but I still think, considering how bad the season was at one point, he was stepping up. He was doing what he had to do with what he could control. Like, so many things went wrong, but yet, time and time again, like I said, when I watch his press conference, whether it's after the game, whether it's during the week, he always said the right things that told me he's not delusional. Like, he's not over his head. He knows what he's doing. It's just, you got to take it one day at a time. You got to improve. You got to grow. And, things might not go your way. And like I said, I genuinely do think he did make some mistakes during the season, especially with selections and magnets and where the players are. But we'll get into that in another video, probably the next episode. But overall, he's the coach. He's our coach. He's the man that's leading us forward, that's got the vision, that knows what he's doing. The whole club backs him. And, you've got to really embrace and appreciate all he's done for us in these last couple of years. We would not be winning that grand final last year if it wasn't for him. He changed us. He really changed the whole club. He brought this passion back, right? Like, this genuine love for the club, for side by side. And this is the motivation for this series came from him on a personal level, because of how much he inspired that. And you kind of find that sort of mantra, the side-by-side mantra, and what it means for heart and soul, black and white. You find that on your own sometimes, and it grows and grows. And when you have someone like him fueling that, it just makes it even better. And, the culture at the club is the best it's ever been. And it just makes you excited to be a part of the club and look forward to the future with this guy. Like, he's the right guy to have. And, the fact that in a bad season I can still give him an 8 out of 10 speaks more about his character, speaks more about his ability as a coach to develop players, and on top of that, to just tactically know the game. I'm telling you, there's not a single player, past or present or coach, that understands the football field it's like a 3D chess for him, right? Do you know 3D chess? That's what a football field is, where he knows what all the gaps are. He knows so much. Like, me personally, I've just understood the game so much more because of a coach like him, who just understand the field better than anyone else, positioning wise, where the channels are, what opens up the game, what closes up the game. all these factors, man. He's one of the greatest coaches that you'll ever come across, and he's early. It's only his third year. Everyone's got to remember this is only his third year, and he revolutionized how teams play. And he took us for a hell of a ride as well. So let's be honest. And I look forward to the future. I look forward to next year. I look forward to what he does during the off season, what decisions he makes, which players stay, which players leave, which players come in. But overall, I do think he had a pretty solid effort for what the season was, for all those compounding factors with the injuries and the umpiring and the premiership hangover. Again, with what he was able to control, I give him an 8 out of 10. Now, obviously, if you look at the season as a whole and not making finals, you might give him 6.57. But again, I just think what he did in those circumstances outweighs everything else for me. Like, he put everything, his heart and soul into it all, and he almost got us back into finals. So that to me just shows you this is the right guy to lead us forward, and absolutely love everything he does. All right, and that's it for the first episode premiere of the Side by Side Footy Show. Now, I do hope to expand this in some way, in other ways where I can include people in, but obviously I'm just starting out now with YouTube and whatnot, so we'll see where it goes. You never know what the future holds, but I'm excited to get into it, get to know the Magpie Army a bit more, get involved, be a part of the club more and stuff like that. I do have those aspirations. I love the club. I love following football, but I really love Collingwood. I do believe there's a sense of belonging I have with Collingwood FC and what the club represents, what Side by Side represents, and I think we've got the right people in the club. And yes, this season was not ideal. Yes, things didn't go our way, but it was still full of highs as much as it was full of lows. And for that, I'm thankful for that. I'm grateful that we beat the teams that I wanted us to beat for the most part. And I just look forward to the future from here. Like, I really, again, like I said, the full season review, I give it a 7 out of 10. I really do, because considering the circumstances, we're still finished okay. Obviously, if you compare that to being the reigning premiers, you go, nice. This season's not more than a 4 out of 10. But I really think, considering the circumstances, when you really take in all that happened, we were screwed out of a final spot. Okay, I wouldn't go as far to say that, but I just thought, you know what, in the end, I still felt pride and gratefulness being a Collingwood fan at the end of this year. And the fact that I felt that tells me that it wasn't a wasted year, right? A lot was learned. A lot of things, like I said before, like when things go wrong in life, when things don't go your way and you're playing catch up, that's where you really find what you need. That's where you really start to have to soul search, right? And really, know, okay, how much does this mean to you? And what I saw from the coach, what I saw from the players is a team that wanted to unite, that wanted to improve and do their absolute best. And that's all you can ask for. As fans, as sitting on the outside, a lot of fans get entitled, like, like now trade rumors about Stringer coming in. A lot of fans, no, we don't want him. It's like, bro, you guys, we're here to support. We're here to back the club, back the team. Sure, you can have your opinions, absolutely, but we don't. We're observers. We're here to watch the team, and whatever role we have with the club, inside and out, whether you're just a supporter, a member, a cheer squad member, whatever it is, we're here to support the club, right? And to me, I'm falling more and more in love with the club as time goes on, despite not making finals. So that's why, for me, 7 out of 10 for the whole season. You saw the player reviews. You saw all we had. Thank you so much for tuning in. This was a lot longer than I thought it would be, but we got there in the end. Got the first episode out. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.